Have you ever looked at a photograph and just felt like you could reach out and touch it? Today, we're diving into the world of texture, and we're going to do it through the lens of one of photography's quiet giants, Irving Penn. So let's start with the big idea here. What is texture in a photo? Well, it's the one thing that speaks directly to our sense of touch. It's what tricks our brain into seeing a flat, two-dimensional object as something real, something tangible, something that has weight and a story. I mean, just look at this. You don't just see a house, right? You can almost feel the rough, splintered wood, the paint flaking off under your fingertips, the grit. That is texture telling a story. It turns a simple image into a physical feeling. And that's the power we're going to explore today. All right, so here's our game plan. We've just talked about the feel of a photograph. Next, we're going to properly meet the master himself, Irving Penn. Then we'll get into how he captured the soul in his portraits, treated fashion like sculpture, and totally mastered the art of the print itself. And we'll wrap it all up by seeing how this gave all of us a new way of looking at the world. So, who was this guy who could make paper and ink feel so incredibly real? Well, Irving Penn was, without a doubt, one of the 20th century's greatest photographers. But he was also an intensely private person who really let his work do all the talking. So he was born in 1917, but get this, he actually started out wanting to be a painter. After design school, he went off to Mexico to paint. But he came back a year later, destroyed all his canvases, and basically called himself a failure. But that failure, it was everything, because he might have given up the brush, but he never, ever lost that painter's obsession with composition, with light, and with surface. And that's exactly what he brought to Vogue in 1943, and it changed photography for good. You know, what's really interesting is that his new boss, the legendary art director Alexander Lieberman, he didn't see Penn's genius in some fancy portfolio. Nope, he saw it in the simple contact sheets from Penn's travels. Lieberman recognized, and these are his words, a mind and an eye that knew what it wanted to see. So he told Penn to just start taking the photos himself. And just like that, a master was born. And this right here illustrates that unique eye perfectly. On the left, you've got this raw documentary shot from the American South. On the right, a super polished, high-fashion Vogue cover. They look like they're from different planets, right? But look closer. In both pictures, Penn strips away everything that's not absolutely essential. He zeroes in on the form, the lines, and, yeah, the texture, whether it's the weathered wood of a barbershop or the delicate veil on a model's face. And that focus on the essential, that's precisely what he brought to his portrait work. See, Penn didn't just take pictures of famous people. He used texture and radical simplicity to pull back the curtain and show us something about their inner life. Just look at this incredible portrait of Pablo Picasso. I mean, that gaze is hypnotic for sure. But notice how Penn frames it with the soft felt texture of the hat and the heavy, coarse wool of the coat. Those textures aren't just details. They're part of the man himself. They're his formidable, grounded presence made visible. So how did he pull this off? His technique was all about radical simplicity. He threw out all the fancy, ornate sets. Instead, he'd put his subjects against a simple curtain, or, and I love this, he'd literally wedge them into a tight corner, taking away their comfort zone. By stripping everything else away, he was just waiting for that moment when the public facade we all wear just crumbles, and you see the real person underneath. And he brought that exact same minimalist philosophy to his fashion work. He didn't see clothing as just something to be worn. To him, it was three-dimensional art. It was sculpture. Check out these two images, taken more than 50 years apart. On the left, from 1950, you have these sharp, almost severe geometric lines of the hat and tie. It's so powerful and graphic. Then on the right, from 2007, a gown that just explodes with these chaotic, crinkled ruffles. In both, Penn is treating the fabric like a sculptor treats clay. He's focused completely on its form and its texture. And he achieved this using those same simple backdrops. Plain white paper, or his signature gray theater curtain, which, by the way, he found in Paris in 1950 and then used for the rest of his career. By removing all the context, all the noise, he turned the clothing into something timeless, a piece of sculpture. But here's the thing. Capturing the image, that was only the first step. For Penn, the real work of art wasn't the negative. It was the final physical print. And this is where he truly became a master craftsman. So by the early 1950s, Penn ran into a fascinating problem. His photos were actually too powerful,
Too intense for the magazines. Editors thought they were too severe, that the incredible detail and texture he was capturing just couldn't be reproduced with normal printing. They actually said his images burned on the page.
So what did he do? His solution was basically to become a time traveler. He went all the way back to the 19th century and revived this incredibly complex process called platinum printing. And this wasn't just photography anymore. It was like alchemy. He would hand-coat artists' paper with precious metals, bond it to aluminum just to keep it perfectly flat, and then build the image up layer by painstaking layer. It was the painter in him, finally taking control, making that final print just as real and textured as what he saw through his lens. And this was his laboratory. He built this darkroom on his family farm, kind of retreating from the world just to perfect his craft. It was in here that he gained absolute control over his images, making sure that every single print carried every ounce of texture and detail that he'd originally seen with his own eye. Through this relentless, lifelong dedication, Irving Penn didn't just change what a photograph could look like, he changed what a photograph could be. He really elevated the whole medium. At a time when photography was mostly just seen as a tool for communication, Penn proved that it could be a masterful work of art, every bit as powerful as a painting or a sculpture, all through his intense focus on form, detail, and the tangible feel of that final print. He trained our eyes to look deeper, to not just see the world, but to really feel it. And that kind of leaves us with a simple question to carry with us. After looking through Penn's eyes, what new textures are you going to notice today? And really, that's what it was all about. A quiet, relentless dedication. A lifelong search for the perfect way to translate what he saw with his eye into something we could almost feel with our hands. A soul brought to life through the magic of the print.